Hello, my name's Elijah Wells, and today's review is Todd Phillips and DC's new movie, Joker, Folie, Deux. Taking place only a couple years after the events of the first film, Arthur Fleck is now incarcerated in the Arkham Asylum after a series of murders that took place within the first film. While pretty much still living his mundane life in prison, of course he has a new trial case which is about him and the state of New York pretty much wanting to find him guilty over the series of murders that he did in the first film, but also he has a new love interest, one particularly of Harley Quinn, who's portrayed by Lady Gaga. And of course, they go back and forth with their relationship while the Joker, Arthur Fleck, being portrayed by Joaquin Phoenix, is still going through the legal process about his past, about his mental health, and of course the prison system. Although after 5 years after the first film came out, it was like an absolute lightning strike of a superhero movie, not just due to its really dark tone and how pretty violent the film is, but also its themes of mental illness and the society like crumbling into itself. And of course it was boasted by the brilliant performance by Joaquin Phoenix, so much so he actually won an Oscar for his performance as Arthur Fleck, or the Joker. Now of course there's Hilda Guerra for her score in that movie, which also did nab her another Oscar, who also had that also brilliant year with the TV series Chernobyl. But also with, knowing this is a Todd Phillips movie, this was a massive departure from his other films like The Hangover and Euro Trip. Pretty much the more fratty, more crude comedy stuff that he's practically known for, like War Dogs or Due Date. But with that movie, he did essentially shifted the blame on the lack of comedy in recent years, saying it was due to woke culture ruining it. But however, he essentially borrowed a lot of elements particularly from Martin Scorsese films like King of Comedy or most notably Taxi Driver. A sequel for essentially one of the most controversial films to have come out in the past decade was a bit of an odd thing to pull off, particularly it's kind of like doing a sequel to essentially a full-blown firestorm of a movie, given how really controversial the first film was to begin with. And of course, there was Lady Gaga, who's going to be playing Harley Quinn in this movie, and Todd Phillips, who's going to return as a director as well as writer. Given that Warner Brothers has gone through a controversial reconstruction recently with David Zaslav as the very unpopular CEO, and with James Gunn as the somewhat divisive head of DC. So, essentially the movie unambiguously announces the new era for DC filmography and things going forward. So, for the Joker movie, let's see how it went. To properly frame the movie, in my opinion, this is how I put it down. Imagine they made a sequel to Clockwork Orange, but early in this one, Alex McLaughlin, the main character in that movie, says in a very condescending and pandering tone, like, "Oh, whatever I did in the first film, it was bad, and it was wrong." So, yes, this is essentially Joker 2 in a nutshell. It's basically pandering and essentially mocking its audience, saying that, ooh, what Arthur did in the first film was bad, and it was wrong, in the most panderizing and most patronizing way humanly possible, to the point that it was basically like waving the car keys in front of my face. So, unfortunately, this is going to be one of those sequels that essentially undoes the first film in the wrong way, but downright counteracts it in a way that's almost contradictive, in my opinion, which is, again, a really blazing move, in my opinion, which is just not exactly the way forward you want to go forward with a sequel. Like, for a sequel, you want to build up more of the world, you want to see how the characters essentially evolved, and see how the world around them interacted differently after the events of the first film. But no, it was just a case of Arthur saying, "Oh, about the first film, I feel like this movie is like a full-blown panic move from like DC and Warner Brothers. Like, they were concerned about the rise of violence, they were concerned about the delinquents' reaction to this film, and they were worried about if it would inspire like an uprising or something, but no, not really. It was just the case that they were just way too panicked about this movie that they kind of really reeled it back with the controversial nature of the movie, to a point it's basically a more anemic version and a more sickly version of the first film. Again, even though the movie does try to go into more controversial topic matters like abuses within the prison system and how neglectful the justice system is in America, but it's kind of done in a way where it's trying a little bit too hard to shock you in that matter, but I think it was just how really uneven the tone of this movie is, which is oddly very surprising. Like, I kid you not, the movie was either a jukebox musical, a psychological thriller, a romantic movie, or a dark comedy, or a superhero movie. The movie's like so many different genres in this movie. Like, I feel like there was just way too many cooks in the kitchen at this point. Like, I feel like way too much was going on that I don't think it was just Todd Phillips who had all these ideas and just didn't know which one he can pick, or it's just a case that they try desperately to throw whatever there is to into the wall and see what sticks, which is again not the most orthodox way you want to go when you want to write a story. Like, you need to have a clear and concise way how you want to do it. Like, again, like I said, the movie does depict morbidly less in the first one where it's about the decay of society and how deeply neglectful we are to the mentally ill, but in this one it's prison abuse, maybe. Justice system's not good, maybe. Like, I don't think the movie's really that sure what it wanted to tackle and how controversial it was. I feel like it just took somewhat of a safe route about it. Like, I feel like it didn't want to be as shocking as the first one, which is, again, if you're going to make it shocking, then go all out like the first film did. The movie, of course, like, unfortunately it did turn off a lot of people. Unfortunately, that movie is a jukebox musical, as in, even though the musicals essentially appear what I'm guessing is Alfred Flex's dream sequences, where they all are like musicals, particularly if it's like a talk show, or if it's like dancing on top of an Arkham hotel, or something on the same avenue, like dancing in like a model church or something, which again, the sets and cinematography, particularly in these movies, and the acting, more so in these sequences of Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix, is also really good in this movie, even though they're good for the most part in the movie, both Joaquin Phoenix and as well as Lady Gaga, who definitely has some chemistry which is good in some instances, but in for other instances in the movie, I feel like they're not the most compatible couple, in my opinion, to a point I don't think even going to Jeremy Kyle would essentially salvage their relationship. I think the one thing that just really annoyed me about this movie, the movie goes out of its way to tell the audience that the first film sucks, and if you like this movie, if you like the first film, then you're probably a full-blown Andrew Tate watcher, or something like that, and it goes into this. And I think it goes in a way where it's not like, let's say, End of Evangelion, which is a brilliant movie where essentially both like Joker and End of Evangelion, where the director was in a bit of a crosshairs about where he wanted to go as a film director, to the point there was some cases of self-sabotage in some instances. So in case of like End of Evangelion, there is definitely a clear, concise idea, as in like particularly in the live action sequence in this movie, where it essentially tells the audience like there's a world outside, it's your world, so just live what you can out of it. Which I feel like the Joker had too much of an identity crisis to pull something off like an End of Evangelion, which I kind of get some idea the movie was a little bit inspired by that movie. But again, I feel like that it didn't have a clear enough vision to pull it off as more easy like it did. In the first film, it was pretty much clear what the point of the film was, as in it's a disenfranchised, deeply impoverished, struggling comedian who realized he basically struck a revolution or a civil uprising, and quickly and quietly rises his way up to the top and wins the trust of all the disenfranchised people around him. Simple. Even like Mr. Gumby from Monty Python would completely understand that storyline. Well, here, I'm not sure what the real arc of this movie is at this point. Like, he's in court now, he's incarcerated, he has a girlfriend. Like, I don't think the movie even knows what the point of itself is at this point. Like, I feel like the sequel was built of necessity, in my opinion. Like, I kind of understood the idea around Todd Phillips, formerly a comedy director, doing the first film in a more bleak and enamoring and violent tone, as in he did say earlier that woke culture ruined comedy. But this one, he kind of just wibbled back, which is already the first warning sign of this movie. Like, okay, maybe people need a bit of a laugh. Like, I feel like he's almost like one film away from being like some anti-woke activist on Twitter who just says anti-woke stuff to get Elon Musk's money. But again, I don't think even Todd Phillips really has really is that interested in that sequel, and it does really show in this movie, like how much everything's clashed in this movie against each other, how it worked against each other, to the point, like I said, the movie essentially is working against the audience, to the point it's almost alienating in some instances. Again, I feel like I just feel a little bit sad for this movie at this point, like, I feel like the first film, why it was so successful in its first place, it was just such a diverse firebolt of a movie that at the end of the day, I don't think even the new heads at Warner Brothers knew how to approach a second film about it. Like, to the point, it should have really just been left alone, in my opinion. Like, I feel like the reason Todd Phillips essentially got away with the first film and got so much praise for it is just that he just came off like now looks like the guy who essentially cosplayed as Martin Scorsese, just tried to make the most bleak and enamoring film he can essentially get away with and not let any comedy ooze in its way. But here, he just didn't know how to approach it. Like, he just, so much of the genre just clashed into itself. Like, one point it's a musical, one point's a thriller, one point's a romantic film, one point's a dark comedy, one point's a superhero movie. Like, I don't think he just tried to like wiggle his way through all the lanes and not sticking to one of them. Like, maybe we should have one that's more of a darkly comedical route. And it just feels like he didn't really commit to a genre in this instance. Even though, let's say it's something like Batman, like the recent Matt Reeves film with Robert Pattinson in the film, like, at least he came into in the offensive about this movie. Like, he had thoughts about the superhero genre, he had thoughts about neo-noir, as in he really tailored back Batman to the more neo-noir roots in the movie, and took a lot of inspiration from a lot of like David Fincher movies like Seven or Girls with Dragon Tattoo, and he essentially got away with it, essentially, as he somewhat understood the source material, he understood the genre of this movie, and he understood what he was taking influences from. But for here, for Todd Phillips, I feel like he had no idea what he was even doing to begin with. Like, maybe he wanted to do a more mishmash of all the genres that he was inspired by, and try to return him more to the more superhero roots that he was known for, and more of the darky comic path that he was known for, but in my opinion, it just was so poorly executed that it just clashed into itself. So for Joker, Folie, Deux, it kind of reminds me like End of Evangelion, which is about a kid who essentially obliterates the world into high heaven. Well, I think Shinji got it wrong. At least this one was brilliant and basically has a more of a clearer idea of what it wanted to be from day one. Well, for Joker, it just felt like it was a sequel that just self-sabotage for the sake of self-sabotage. Like, the ideas are never made super clear. I feel like it just backed out for most of its controversial moments. And also the performances of Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix was also really good in this movie. And also there's Harvey Dent in the movie, but he never becomes Two-Face, which is really disappointing at best. I feel like the movie is just, it was just a sequel that was afraid of the first film, or let alone ashamed of the first film, so it tries to scale it back to the point that it's pretty much counteracting with the first film and contradicting it to begin with. Like, I feel like this movie is just too scared to exist at this point. Like, it didn't know what it wanted to be. It wanted to be a dark comedy. No. It wanted to be a musical. No. It wanted to be a psychological thriller. No. It wanted to be a superhero movie. No. It just did not know what it even wanted to be at this point. Like, this movie is like a full-blown identity crisis of a movie. Like, it's just not fun to look at this point. Like, yeah, I feel like this movie feels like it doesn't do right with its audience. I feel like this point it just essentially mocks and looks down at its audience and essentially tells them, hey, you're wrong. Hey, this movie sucks. Like, hey, you know him? Well, it didn't go that way. I feel like this movie is essentially just picking a confrontation or an argument with its own audience. Like, even though I don't hire it to the highest regard, in my opinion, but I feel like whatever opinion you held with the first film, it's just saying that, oh, okay, you like the first film, guess what, we hated it too. Like, it just goes to question, like, was the first film even good to begin with? Like, is Todd Phillips, like, even a director that should be able to handle these things in the first place? Like, how did he manage to get away with it? Like, if Matt Reeves, like, did a more neo-noir film, he stuck to it. Like, hopefully he does in the second film. But this one, it feels like he was just cosplaying as did Martin Scorsese, like cosplaying as his influences, while Matt Reeves pretty much understood his influences and took it from there. And this one, I don't think he really understood his own influence of what he wanted to do, and even understood what the second film was going to be. So, for Joker, Folie, Deux, I'm feeling a 4 out of 10 on this one. Joke's on me. So, what do you think of Joker, Folie, Deux? Let me know in the comments down below. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And this is Live Royals, and bye!